Hello, and welcome once again to Strategy Rewind. My name is Miguel Lebron, and I'm a personal growth strategist. I'm so excited that you would be a part of today's episode. Today's episode features a conversation I had with Leilani Langdon. She has a podcast where it empowers individuals to own their story. And when we talk about mental health, it's so important to own your story, whether it was good, bad, or you're unsure how to categorize your experiences. I'm so excited to share with you this full conversation, as I know it will provide the strategies and the tactics you need for a breakthrough moment in your mental health. Mental health is so important because when we talk about being able to live the life we've always wanted, a lot of that starts in our mind. It is in our mind that we begin to develop a world view that may either line up with the greatness that we possess or may actually hinder it. And Leilani, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yes, ma'am. For those who are not familiar with the amazing things you're doing, let them know about yourself.
So my name's Leilani Langdon, and I am a therapist and a coach, a story coach. And I have been working this last year or so in helping people know, own, and share their story. And one of the ways that I do that is through the What's Your Story Live podcast, where people come on and share their compelling stories, and we get to understand what their stories are, you know, what has led them to where they are and what's inspired them to now be able to share that story so that others can be inspired to do the same. So it's been a fun ride.
Oftentimes people find it difficult to embrace their story, accept their story. Rather, it's because good things happen and they don't think they're worthy of it, or bad things happen and I don't even want to retouch the subject.
Yes.
From the standpoint of personal growth and mental health, those two aspects, talk about how important it is to simply embrace our story.
Yeah, one of the things that I say to wrap up every show is that purpose is found in knowing, owning, and sharing your story. So the question is, are you ready to share yours? And I think, you know, the sharing part of our story is important, but there are several steps before getting to the place of sharing your story. And that is embracing your story. That's being able to sit with yourself and the experiences that have shaped you, right? Because the truth is that all our experiences have shaped us, whether we recognize them or not. They are the reasons why we make decisions. They are the reasons we lean towards a certain way. And those of us and those individuals who choose to really embrace and sit with their story really end up, I love this quote by Pico Iyer that says, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but this is the idea. The idea is that experiences come from memories, right? Memories are created through our experiences, but it's reflection that give them meaning, right? And so if we miss the important part of reflecting on our experiences and our story, we miss gaining purpose. We miss the lessons and the growth that can come from the things that have happened to us, the good and the bad, right? And now I know, and I always say this, and I know there's always people who are like, you know, you have to be careful with telling people to, you know, embrace their stories. They may not be right. You're right. Not everybody is ready to sit with their experiences. And generally that's talking about the negative experiences that they've gone through. But I want to encourage people to be willing to begin somewhere, whether that's thinking about a memory, right? To just till you're comfortable. What did that mean? What did it look like? What did it feel? Why did that happen? Why are you there? What has it allowed you to do or become as a result of that experience? And in being able to take that step, it's just so important for us to gain purpose, to glean wisdom, lessons, and growth from that.
From the standpoint, no, you did. And from the standpoint of personal growth, as you said, there's so much there to discover with just embracing the story. But talk a little bit about that mental health side of part of things, of embracing our story, rather good, bad, and different. Talk about that mental health side of things.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because there's actually a study that says that most individuals, when they experience something that impacts their mental health, right, in any way, shape, or form, they actually experience more times than not experience post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress. But what we hear a lot about is the post-traumatic stress, right? And the truth is that 75 to 80% of people actually experience tremendous amounts of growth when they experience a difficult experience. They have a difficult moment in their lives. And part of that is that when we go through a difficult time, we have a choice, right? And that then dictates how we deal with it, and mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, right? We can either choose to look at ourselves as victims, or we can look at the experience as something that I can grow from, right?
Conquerors.
That is, yes, conquerors. I love that, right? It's called a redemptive version of your story. You can look at your story from a redemptive version, or you can look at it as, this is impossible. This is hopeless. I'm never, I can never trust anybody.
Right.
I can never do this again. And regardless of which angle you take, right? Regardless of which decision you make or how to look at your story, there's pain. There is inevitably pain that comes with that. And I think that many people ignore the fact that these experiences are not serving us, right? Whether that's because they're causing anxiety, fear, anger, resentment, right? And when that is bottled up and that is suppressed, it comes out in other ways, right? So I was just listening to a podcast last night, and it was a couple going through a therapy session. I was like, this makes sense. It's what I've experienced talking to people, but they were arguing about the cat, right? The cat triggered this blow up, right? And they're in counseling and therapy because they're like, I don't know that we're going to make it, right?
Because of the cat.
Yes. But the reality is that the cat is a symptom of, is a trigger to the root problem,
right?
Which was a sense of abandonment in childhood, right? And this sense of defiance to need to stand up against it. And somehow the cat triggered that, right? So, but the truth is that our stories, again, impact us in ways that sometimes we don't realize. And that is going to in turn impact our mental health, depending on how we view that particular experience and story.
Yeah, I find that so awesome what you're saying is like, we often look at the fact of, okay, that situation, that experience, how traumatic it was, but oftentimes we neglect to realize the lesson learned and the abilities that we've gained through it. So talk about the strategies that we can implement on sharing the story. So we talk about embracing that story. Talk about sharing the stories. What are the strategies that we can implement on being able to do so?
Yes, absolutely. So I want to encourage anyone who's listening, if you're afraid of, you feel moved to want to share your story, because the truth is that sharing our stories are powerful, right? They inspire, they encourage, they allow other people to have a compass as to how to get from point A to point B, right? They can see themselves in you and your story. But before you can get there, I would encourage you to sit to write the story, right? Start by writing the story. Maybe then take it a step further. And if you're having a hard time writing that story and you're finding yourself getting stuck at certain pieces because it's emotionally difficult, or you're having a hard time remembering, don't be afraid to connect with a therapist. I'm a coach, right? I'm a therapist. It's what I do. So part of what I encourage people to do is find someone that you feel safe with, that you can process some of these things, because the truth is that when you're with something so much, it's really hard to step away and get a different perspective. And sometimes that additional person helps shed light and clarity to something that you had never seen before. And then when you're getting ready to share, I would say a couple strategies, right? You have to write your story. You have to write it out. There's just nothing like putting pen to paper. And for those of you who don't like writing, you can type it out.
Right.
But in doing that, you glean so much information, and it actually prepares you for how you want to share your story, right? Because the truth is that not everything in our story needs to be shared in order to convey the power in our story. And so we need to be careful when we're sharing that we're not exposing or leaving ourselves open to really experience any secondary trauma or any other pain points that we're going through. But yes, you always want to write your story. And then I would encourage you to then share it with one or two trusted friends, right? Bring in your inner circle, have them read it, right? Read it to them. And that again begins to strengthen that muscle that tells you, right, and pushes away the fear that says, I can't do this, which is so important. And then, share it with a small group, and then progressively, right, you take the small steps to begin the process of having the courage to now share your story on a larger scale.
As you mentioned, you host a podcast that helps individuals to be able to share their story and that bigger scale and impact more people. Because as you mentioned, our story impacts people. And not only that, but gives voice to their situation. For those listening and want to get connected with you and your amazing podcast, let them know how they can do so.
Yes, you can find What's Your Story live on all podcast platforms. So listen to the last 3 seasons. Season 4 is in the works. Or you can watch it live, not live, but you can watch the actual show on YouTube, What's Your Story Live. And you can find me at Leilani Langdon on Instagram or Facebook.
Leilani, I thank you so much for being part of the program.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful that you would be connected with Strategy Rewind. Thank you so much. And thank you to today's guest. Head over to the show notes of this episode where you'll find their details so you can connect with them. But if you want to take a bigger leap towards your breakthrough moment, there in the show notes, you'll also find a link where you can set up a free 30-minute strategy session with me. It's imperative that you put these strategies to work so that you can have a breakthrough moment.